welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral. My name is Leigh, I'm the Cathedral Steward here at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I would do most of the guided tours for all our visitors. And it is my pleasure to talk to you, the people of All Saints West Village. And may I bring best wishes from our Archbishop John, from Shane, our Dean, and from everyone here at the Cathedral to all of you at All Saints West Village. The history of St. Patrick's Cathedral dates back to the year 445, when St. Patrick built a great stone church on top of this hill. Around it, the hill developed into a monastic community and eventually developed into the city as we know it today. From the 600s to the 1600s, the cathedral had an unfortunate history of arson and fire damage. And in fact, over that 1,000 years, the cathedral was burnt down a total of 17 times. Responsibility for that, there was a few lightning strikes, there was damage caused by the Vikings, the Normans, the English, and in fact the Irish as well. One of the people who is buried here at this cathedral is the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru. The High King was in power up until the year 1014, when he died at the Battle of Clontarf, which is on the north side of Dublin. And it was his wish that he was to be buried at St. Patrick's Church in Armagh. One of our previous archbishops of this cathedral was Malachy O'Margar, who went on after he died. He was beatified by the Roman Catholic Church and became St. Malachy of Armagh. The present building which we are now in was built in the year 1268, and 2 years ago we had just finished commemorating the 750th anniversary of our building. Over the next 200 or 300 years continued the destructions and the fire damage and the rebuilding, and eventually we come to the 1530s, when a momentous change happens across the whole of Europe due to the events which we now refer to as the Reformation. One of our great figures in Irish Christianity has to be that of Archbishop James Ussher. Ussher was a Dublin native and became Archbishop of Armagh in 1625. He is a prolific writer of his time and was highly regarded both in royalty and then ultimately in the English Commonwealth by the likes of Cromwell, and due to his skills as an archbishop and also as a scholar. So much so that when he died in 1656, Cromwell ordered that he was to get a full state funeral, and he was buried in Westminster Abbey. His collection of books went on to form what was given to Trinity College Library in Dublin, and that started off their collection of books. Another great figure in Armagh Cathedral terms is that of Archbishop Richard Robinson. Robinson was Archbishop of Armagh from 1765 until his death in 1794. And he came from North Riding in what was then called Yorkshire, which we now believe is County Durham. And he presided over a huge transformation over the city. The city was quite run down at that time, and he had experienced a renaissance in art, in education, and building styles being changed during that Georgian period in his time in England, and he wanted to bring that to Ireland. And this Armagh was called a city of mud huts during his early time as Archbishop, but in 1794 it had been transformed into one of the most beautiful Georgian cities anywhere in the whole of Ireland. How the cathedral looks today is the product of a major restoration that happened here between 1834 and 1840. And we are exceptionally lucky that this building is still here, because during that time, the Church of Ireland was a state church, and the proposal from the government was to demolish this cathedral and build a brand new one elsewhere in the city. And we are so fortunate that our Archbishop, Lord Beresford, decided to restore the cathedral, and in fact paid for much of the work that went on during that 7-year period. That gives you a little bit of the introduction into our cathedral. One of the quirks of this cathedral is actually in its shape. It is cruciform in shape, but this building is actually crooked. It is built so that the head of that cross shape is off-centre. And this was done deliberately in the 13th century for Archbishop O'Scannell, so that the building portrayed how our Lord Jesus died on the cross, and that is with his head having fallen to one side. Life in Armagh is like any other city. We have exactly the same problems of economic deprivation, with unemployment, but this is a city where the people are generally united. The people are very respectful of each other's traditions here, and we have in Armagh an organisation called the Armagh Cathedrals Partnership, where our two cathedrals, both ironically called St. Patrick's, we come together, we organise events during the whole year where both cathedral communities would attend those, and just for fellowship and learning. One of the major occasions during the cathedral's partnership would have to be during the whole St. Patrick's Festival, and it is a very large event here in Armagh. It would go on for roughly 7 to 10 days of different events in the community. Our cathedral, some years ago, was allowed by the RCB and General Synod to appoint ecumenical canons. And they are canons, they are ministers from other Christian traditions. And our two ecumenical canons here in this cathedral are the Reverend Tony Davidson from the Presbyterian Church in Ireland, who is the Presbyterian minister in the city here and has been a great friend to us over some decades. Our second ecumenical canon is Abbot Mark Ephraim Nolan. He is the Abbot of Holy Cross Abbey in Rostrevor, and he was appointed some years ago, and both have added greatly to the life of the cathedral. They both sit on the cathedral chapter, and they have preaching rights where they come and they would preach to the community here on 1 or 2 Sundays in a year. Music has played a very important role within this cathedral over centuries. And in fact, Armagh can lay claim to the oldest choral tradition in Ireland. And that dates back to about the 700s approximately, when a group of secular monks called the Culdees came here and established a monastery for themselves. And they provided the music here for centuries, up until the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1500s. After that, in the early 1600s, a choir was formed under command of the king, and that choir has been here ever since, over 400 years later. And that choir is made up of boys and men. And it is very unusual to have a choir in Ireland made up solely of boys and men. And we are very proud to carry on that tradition of boys leading the worship. Another part of our life here in Armagh is our daily prayer. every morning at 9:30, we would have a short service of Matins, where we use that opportunity as the mother church of the diocese to lead all Anglicans in prayer for local issues that affect our families, maybe bereavements, people who are ill, to needs of our city, our country, and in fact more national and international issues where we will remember each of them in prayer. One of the great figures that has come from this cathedral is that of a man called Mr. Charles Wood. Born in Vickers Hill, Armagh, literally 20 yards outside of our west door, in 1866. He was a chorister in this cathedral. He showed a great natural talent for music and went on to be a professor of music at either Oxford or Cambridge University, and is one of the finest composers in the Anglican choral tradition. And two of his pieces that he wrote are O Thou the Central Orb and Expectans Expectavi. And at most national services in Westminster Abbey, you will usually hear a piece by Wood somewhere during that service. Can I thank you for listening to me over this last while? We will be so delighted when we see tours resume again, where groups of people can come to buildings like this and see around them, to experience life in Armagh, to talk with us, to ask questions, and this part of life we really, really miss. So unfortunately, we have to make do with short videos. I would love for this to have been the like of a Q&A to be done live, but all I can do is may I wish everybody a very good day, whenever you're watching this, to please keep safe, and we look forward to the time when we can all come together and worship in our churches, to visit each other's churches, and to resume what we would have known as normal life. So thank you for listening to this, and please keep safe and have a good day.
Hello, my name is Shane Forster, and I'm the Dean of Armagh. I'm delighted to be able to take part in this, your online pilgrimage, and to have the opportunity, along with Leigh, to show you something of this beautiful Cathedral Church of St. Patrick here in Armagh, the ecclesiastical capital of Ireland. And hopefully you will experience something of the religious and spiritual significance of this place, this cathedral, and this hill where St. Patrick built his great stone church. A year ago, none of us could have imagined what lay in store for us with the terrible coronavirus pandemic. For the most part of the year, the cathedral has remained closed to tourists and visitors. In-person opportunities of worship and gatherings for worship here in the cathedral were suspended last March, and it wasn't until the summer months that the building opened again for services, but with very strict protocols and reduced seating capacity because of the 2-metre social distancing rule. So whereas in normal times at a big national or provincial service we could have up to 500 people in here, our capacity now is sitting at about 40. That's all we can get into a service on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, as we are only able to use every third row of seats within the cathedral. Service sheets have been emailed and have been posted to the members of the cathedral congregation over this time. And back at Christmas, the cathedral choir produced an online carol service. And since the beginning of Lent, I've been posting weekly services in video format on our Facebook page and on our cathedral website. I was appointed as Dean of Armagh last December, and then made history when I was conferred as Dean in a Zoom meeting, which lasted about 10 minutes, and that was back in February. I will, though, in time, once the restrictions have eased, be installed to my seat here in the choir. But I am in good company as the Archbishop of Armagh, Archbishop John MacDonald, who was elected to the office of Archbishop and Primate of all Ireland way back about this time last year. He too has yet to be enthroned. So, in the days that lie ahead, there will be many big occasions and very important services here in the life of the Cathedral. The most difficult part of the pandemic has been the inability to meet with people face to face. And for me, as like with all clergy, having to take services, talking to an iPad, to a screen or to a camera just like this, it's not quite the same as when you have a congregation sitting right in front of you. So as we look to the future, what next? Well, we are very fortunate here in Northern Ireland that we have been given the go-ahead to open our doors for public worship as of Good Friday. And that's not the case in the Republic of Ireland, so that means even here in the Diocese of Armagh, many of our parishes will be open for Easter, and yet there will be some who, because of the jurisdiction in which they fall, will not be allowed to open their doors. But even though we'll be here for Easter, there will be again very much reduced numbers present because of the social distancing. And although we can meet for face-to-face in-person gatherings, it'll be face-to-face with face coverings. The use of hand sanitizers will be enforced, and all the other rules that I'm sure you too are very familiar with in England. The Cathedral Choir here in Armagh has not sung together at a service since this time last year. The gentlemen of the choir, though, will return at Easter, but we're going to have to hold off for another while for the boy choristers until we see what the transmission rate is like within the community at this time when the schools have returned. So we'll see the impact it has upon the community in the weeks to come. Unfortunately, some of the boys' voices will have broken within the year, so the choir will need a lot of rebuilding in the months that lie ahead. It will also be some time before we can welcome tourists and visitors back into the building, and we will take our advice and our lead from other cathedrals, from museums and places of interest here in Northern Ireland. I hope to establish new links with some of the cathedrals here on the island of Ireland and across the UK, and work to increase the visitor numbers to this, the ecclesiastical capital of Ireland. Hopefully, we will in time be able to hold lots of church music events and involve the parishes of the diocese here within the life of the cathedral. But you know, everything's going to take time, and we'll all just have to be patient. It is all in God's hands. But please do come and visit us when the restrictions are over. But in the meantime, stay safe and stay well. Let me leave you with a little blessing, which I'm rather fond of, and which is often used in this part of the world. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. Amen. Take care.